Okay, good evening everyone. It's now 6 p.m. So welcome to tonight's Planning Applications Committee meeting. So I'll just start with the usual housekeeping. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Virgin Money building, formerly the Yorkshire Bank, on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourselves known to members of staff. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded for future publication on the council website. Please can I ask that you turn your mobile phone off at this point, or at least set it to silent for the duration of the meeting. Item number 2. I have two apologies this evening. First of all, we've got Councillor Hammersley, who is being substituted by Councillor Evans. So thank you very much, Councillor Evans, for turning up this evening. And I also have apologies from Councillor Rudkin, who's been substituted for by Councillor Watkins. So once again, thank you very much, Councillor Watkins, for stepping up and joining us this evening. Do we have any other apologies? No. Okay, the next item item 3 is the minutes. Could I have somebody who's happy to propose the minutes are an accurate record? Thank you, Councillor Markham. And a seconder, Councillor Smith. Do I have any objections at all to those minutes? No, so I shall sign those minutes off in that case. Okay, that then brings us on to declarations of interest. Are there any members who have a declaration of interest other than any that are on the schedule that I need to mention? No. Do I have any declarations of contact? Once again, okay, I've got 2. So, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to find... Yeah. In relation to agenda item number 1, as leader of the council, I have had a meeting at their request with the agent of the developer for Falklands Farm, but I did advise him I am on the planning committee and gave no indication as how I would vote on the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Evans, you also indicated to speak. Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Do I have any other declarations of contact? No? Okay, so that brings us on then to our first item then, which I believe, Darren, you're going to take us through this evening. Ooh.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. This application is a Section 73 application to vary a condition placed on a previous permission. In this case, the applicant wishes to vary Condition 22 of the outline permission 34901. Condition 22 on that previous outline related to a percentage limit on the amount of the site used for B8, which is a storage and distribution use. And this was limited to 70% maximum, with the other 30% being B2 general industrial on the site. The site is a 26-hectare site and it's predominantly agricultural land at the moment, although there is that outstanding outline permission. As members will recall, that was approved by committee at the end of 2020, with the first phase of the reserve matters being approved at a recent committee. The key issues to consider in the determination of this application are highway safety, noise, air quality, and any relevant planning obligations. In regards to the impact on highway safety, this current application proposes to amend Condition 22 to allow a higher percentage of the employment site to be used for B8, storage and distribution. Highways were consulted at the County Council and requested some additional sensitivity testing, that's National Highways were consulted, requested some additional sensitivity testing which was carried out and satisfied them. Warwickshire County Council highways were also consulted and they requested some additional funds for their testing. The funds required £5,000 for the additional testing. The applicant is content with this, and so the County Council have no objection to the scheme. A noise assessment was submitted with the scheme to assess the impact on the nearest residential units. The assessment has found that noise from activity arising from the proposal is in accordance with the relevant guidelines and British standards. The environmental health team have been consulted and have no objection. In regard to the impact on air quality, again, MBBC Environmental Health were consulted, and they had no objection in regard to that matter either. The outline permission included a Section 106 agreement in order to obtain funds required for planning obligations. The only additional request as a result of this variation is for the £5,000 for the advanced highways testing. The applicant has agreed to this contribution, and therefore this will be included in a deed of variation to the earlier Section 106. It is considered, therefore, that the proposed development will be in accordance with the development plan and other policies within the MPPF. The recommendation is therefore one of approval, subject to the varied conditions and a deed of variation as set out on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Darren. So we've got before us tonight a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a deed of variation to original Section 106 obligation for planning application for this planning application reference. Is there anyone who would like to propose this in order that we can debate this? So thank you, Councillor Evans, proposing. And do I have a seconder? Councillor... sorry, I've just drawn a blank. Hartsall, sorry, Councillor Hartsall. I know, I can't see it. I've taken my contacts out. So sorry about that. That's going on the bloopers reel later on, I feel. Sorry, Councillor Hartsall, my apologies for that. So seconded by Councillor Harthorn. So this will now enable us to move to the discussion. Do I have any speakers on this matter? Councillor Conticore.
Thank you very much, Chair. I asked this to go to committee because we have this development in the borough plan. It has been approved in principle for mixed use, all these B2s and B8s. We have approved part of the site to be developed, all well and good, but now the developer wants to change it to be significantly more based on distribution, which puts significantly more traffic through the whole borough. And reading the words in the report, it's talking about traffic going up the long chute, round the Nuneaton Ring Road, and traffic dispersing. And I'm most concerned about the roads that are not really suitable as they are for mixed use, cyclists, pedestrians, and distribution facility lorries, all going through Attleborough, Eastborough Way. There's no cycle on Eastborough Way, up the long chute. And it's a great pity we haven't got a highways officer or the applicant here to actually give us a clue as to what's being proposed in terms of what sort of developer, what sort of movement, what sort of lorries. And so I think we don't know enough to actually want to let this change from a part manufacturing site to a part distribution to an entirely distribution site that will have a very different profile of manoeuvres. And if the applicant or the planning conditions had said that, all the non-local journeys will go down the Bedworth bypass and not through Bedworth and not through Attleborough, I'd be content that this was going on to the strategic road network. Whereas when I read things about it dispersing on its way to the long chute and things, I am concerned about the traffic impact of this. I don't know if the officers have more details, but I'm not content to approve this without actually having a highways officer to explain the modelling and explain what's going on. If you were to approve it also, on condition 24, there's a very good statement saying that you don't build the bit by the canal bridge until you put the cycle route in. That isn't applied to the rest of the cycling conditions. The applicant has to put drawings into the council for approval, but as the conditions are worded, they never actually need to be implemented. So I wouldn't mind condition 14 being modified if appropriate as well. But I say I'm not happy to approve this at the moment because of the traffic impact across the borough on areas where, going through Attleborough past the school by Cutting Arches, it's not a sensible place for traffic to be routed, and we shouldn't have a distribution centre sending traffic past the school, Wenbrook School, through Attleborough, around Eastborough Way and up the long street. We need some traffic routing on this if we're going to have a distribution centre. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacott. I don't know if you want to come back on the issue there regarding the condition which Councillor Condacott mentioned.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to pick up a couple of things. The applicant did carry out additional highway sensitivity testing. That was seen by National Highways and the Highways Authority, and they're both content with the scheme. If they had concerns over highway safety, they would have raised that at the consultation stage. In regard to condition 14, it requires the scheme to be implemented in accordance with the approved details. Although there's no sort of time trigger point for that, it can't be carried out in any other way than with the approved details. Additionally to that, that condition is already approved. These are conditions from the original outline. It's already been approved essentially. To change that and make it more strict now might be seen as unreasonable by an inspector. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Darren. Do I have any other speakers on this matter? Okay, in that case, we'll go to the vote. So all those in favour? Against? Yeah. Any abstentions? No, so that is carried. Thank you. If you'd like to go on to item number 2, please.
Thank you, Chair. This planning application is a proposal for a change of use from the existing shop to a hot food takeaway. The site is located close to the junction of Sherborne Avenue and Bucks Hill in Nuneaton, in a predominantly residential area. The previous use of the site is as Green Fingers Florist, which would fall under a Class E of the 2020 Use Classes Order. The key issues to assess in the determination of this application are the principle of the development, the impact on residential amenity, and the impact on highway safety. The use is identified by Annex 2 of the National Planning Policy Framework as a main town centre use. In this case, in an out-of-town centre location. Paragraph 91 of the NPPF states that where an application fails to satisfy a sequential test, it should be refused. This need for a sequential test is echoed by Policy HS7 of the Borough Plan. HS7 also states that regard should be had to highway safety, which will be considered later in this presentation, and the supporting hot food takeaway supplementary planning document states that regard should be had to residential amenity. Again, this will be dealt with shortly. The sequential test is required by policy, would be required to look at town centre sites first, then district centres and then local centres. And then finally, if there are no sufficient sites in those, then out of town centre sites would be looked at. No sequential test was submitted with this application. Section 6.5 of the Hot Food Takeaway SPD states that takeaways can have adverse impacts on the surrounding area. The potential negative impacts on residential amenity include, but are not limited to, odours, noise and litter. Environmental health have concerns in regard to noise and cooking odours due to the close proximity to residential properties. No external ventilation is proposed, but would require separate permission if the application were to be approved tonight. Also, no hours are proposed. Overall, impact on residential amenity is considered to be significant, and this weighs significantly against the application. Warwickshire County Council Highways were consulted and have an objection to the scheme. The site currently features only 2 parking spaces, and although there are more nearby, these are necessary for the co-op and other nearby uses. This is considered insufficient for a hot food takeaway use. The use would have a negative impact on highway safety due to it being close to the junction of Bucks Hill, and any on-street parking, which is likely given the lack of on-site provision, therefore could create a hazard. It is therefore considered that the proposal would negatively affect highway safety. In conclusion, therefore, the proposal is recommended for refusal for the reasons as set out on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Darren. We've got a statement from Councillor Mandy Tromans, which Wendy will now read out.
After many discussions with residents and looking carefully at the application, I would like to make the following comments for the Planning Committee's consideration. An overriding concern that has been raised by residents again and again over the past few months is poor, obstructive parking at the roundabout junction of Sherborne Avenue and Bucks Hill to access the shops currently operating there. I can only imagine that an additional food outlet with increased traffic will increase such problems. I am concerned that this is a very busy junction and additional parked vehicles and traffic movements will increase the possibility of accidents. I note that the plan submitted confirms 2 allocated parking spaces for the business in the adjoining car park. This car park is very small, with a lot of vehicles coming and going, and several minor accidents have occurred there. I have witnessed one myself. I believe that siting a food takeaway here will increase the flow of traffic in the car park, with additional workers, customers, and inevitably the delivery drivers, Uber, Just Eat, etc. I do not believe that the parking provisions are sufficient. In addition, I would ask that the committee consider if this application is in line with current policy on hot food takeaways being sited in the main community hubs. The immediate area is predominantly residential, with no similar outlets nearby. I believe that the siting of a hot food takeaway would have a negative impact on residential amenity. However carefully the business is managed, there is a likelihood of increased litter, vermin, cooking smells and odour from additional food waste and noise. This is the wrong place for a hot food outlet. I ask the committee to consider the comments above and the views of local residents and officers and make the only reasonable decision to refuse planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Wendy. So we have in front of us then a recommendation to refuse planning permission for reasons as stated by Darren. Do I have somebody who's prepared to propose? So Councillor Smith and then Councillor Wilson, if you're happy to second that. Okay, so for purposes of debate then, do I have any speakers on this matter? Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Before I make any decisions on this, I'd like to probably get some guidance off the officers, because Warwickshire County Council is saying that the 2 spaces is not sufficient. Well, what does Warwickshire County Council recommend then? That what do they say is sufficient? It also says that there's no other food outlets close by. Well, there is. There's one further down at Trafford Drive. I don't know much about what hot food is going to be served here, but perhaps something like that would be useful. Find it difficult to believe that we can refuse something on litter and odour. So I'd just like a little bit more guidance off the officers, please.
Okay, can you sort of try and fill in some of the gaps there for Councillor Watkins, please? Thank you very much.
So in terms of the parking provision, the newly adopted car parking standards guide sets out that sui generis uses such as this, the hot food takeaway, it doesn't actually set a limit. It said that it should be proportionate and acceptable. And with a highways objection and an officer opinion too, we think 2 is insufficient for a use of this type. In terms of, litter is one issue. There's essentially 3 reasons for refusal here, which is it being out of town centre with no sequential test to prove it has to be here, the impact of residential amenity by way of litter, noise, odour, and also the impact on highway safety by the lack of car parking. So litter is a small aspect of it, which is supported by the supplementary planning document, but it's a balanced application where there's more than one reason for refusal. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watkins. Does that sort of satisfy your... No? Okay, I don't know if there's anything else you can add there or if that's the definitive answer.
Do you want to ask me a question?
Okay, Councillor Condicord, did I see you indicating to speak?
Yeah, just a quick point. It looks like there's flats above the business, and in the paperwork it said there were flats above. Is the flat above owned by the business, or is it actually just a ground floor thing? So effectively, the effects of the property would be on a flat above that is unconnected and haven't asked to live above a takeaway.
We haven't got any information about the site ownership, I'm afraid. It's not necessarily a planning consideration. We protect the amenity of any residential unit, regardless of ownership. Thanks, Chair.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Condicourt?
Yeah, no, my question was more or less, this is an application just for the ground floor, and actually
That's correct. It's a change of use just to the ground floor. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, do I have any other speakers or questions? Yeah, Councillor Harbison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. In terms of the change of use, without having it in front of me, have extra considerations been taken in terms of wastage, natural wastage from, because obviously it's going to be different from a florist. When you become a fast food joint, you have a lot of wastage from kebab trays, etc., etc. Has that been addressed within it? Thank you.
There's no planning mechanism for us to address or consider the amount of waste a business generates. Obviously, the litter side of it, that's one thing that's picked up within the SPD, but there's no consideration within planning for the amount of waste that a use has in terms of its impact on the planet, so to speak. Whether that's right or wrong is up to the individual, but there's no mechanism in planning for that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I think we have to remember that policies change over time and that we have the new borough plan in place which addresses these. So I've sat on planning applications before where this would probably have gone through because there wasn't a requirement or policy in particular relating to hot food takeaways, for example. So we do have to acknowledge that these things do evolve and change as time goes on. I do accept that litter is probably the weaker element in this because you can actually condition things like putting litter bins in, etc. Because I know that's been done in other places, particularly in my ward, for example, where I have Domino's, which many moons ago, the previous, shall we say, less responsible owners had a fish and chip shop there, and odour was actually an issue regarding that, and planning permission was refused there on grounds of odour because they didn't actually put in the right mechanisms to deal with the odour. I'm presuming that's one of the reasons this has come forward like this, that they haven't actually put forward treatment methods for actually dealing with odour, like the extractor fans and this, that and the other that goes with it. Because that went to appeal, the one in my particular ward, and we upheld the appeal. So we were successful on that, and we were able to take enforcement action because the owners refused to comply with the results. So it is possible, and I'm actually glad to see that our planning policies are protecting the little people for a change, i.e. the residents who live on a residential street who just want peaceful enjoyment of their life. It is actually a major change of use, in my view, from a florist where you will have passing trade to a fast food outlet where there will be, in order for it to make it work, far more vehicular movements coming along there, which is one of the reasons I suspect that highways have come to the conclusion they did. And the difference with Trafford Drive, Chair, is that that was actually designated to be a community facility there. That it's not just the fish and chip shop there, there's a spa and there are a few other shops. So this is just two shops, a small co-op and a florist. So I think there are significant distinguishing differences there to justify and warrant the reasons for refusal. And knowing how busy Bucks Hill gets, I could foresee and have actually seen major traffic impacts there now. I appreciate we can't force an applicant to make existing problems better. We can only make them make future problems that may happen better. and I think there would be increased vehicular movements and traffic there at a junction which is already difficult enough as it is. So I would agree with the reasons for refusal. I would accept with Councillor Watkins that litter is perhaps the weaker one, not because there are conditions, but I think what we've got is justifiable and can be upheld at appeal if it does go that way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Do I have any other speakers? I mean, I would personally just echo actually what you just said, Councillor Wilson. You know, I'm particularly pleased to see sort of SPDs are there as much as anything to add protection to residents, to allow them to enjoy their sort of respective communities and areas. So I'm quite pleased with that whole. Yes, I agree, litter is the weaker issue, but I think there's sufficient other issues there in my mind to sort of, you know, agree with the officer recommendation for tonight. So if there's no other speakers then, we'll put this to vote. So all those in favour of the motion, which was to reject the application? Okay, against? And any abstentions? Okay, so that is carried. Okay, that then concludes tonight's meeting. So I'll now ask Victoria if you could turn the live stream off, and I would thank all members for attending this evening's Planning Application Committee meeting. Thank you so much.